Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder why kids sometimes seem to understand things without you saying them directly? Or how families playfully tease each other and still manage to get things done? Well, this new study dives deep into how families use playful language, especially with young children. And it turns out teasing is way more common and important than just simple jokes. This research looked at what happens at the dinner table when moms, dads, and grandparents talk with their little ones. They wanted to understand how families use language that isn't exactly what it sounds like saying "you are such a great helper" when someone has actually made a mess. This kind of language is called nonliteral evaluation, and it includes things like irony and teasing. The big question was what kinds of this playful language happen, how often, and what jobs it does in the family. So imagine researchers watching a lot of family dinners. They looked at over 70 video sessions, which is almost 24 hours of talking, and analyzed over 20,000 different things people said. They were specifically hunting for instances where people were evaluating something or someone in a way that wasn't straightforward. They found that out of all the instances they looked at, about 76% were non-literal. But here's the really interesting part. Teasing was much more common than strict verbal irony. Teasing happened about 12 times more often than what they call strict irony. Strict irony is when you say the opposite of what you mean, and you expect the other person to get that you don't really mean it. For example, saying "that is a brilliant idea" when someone just did something really silly. They found only 8 examples of strict irony in all that data. Teasing, on the other hand, happened 97 times. So, while irony is interesting, teasing seems to be the go-to playful language tool for many families in this study. And guess who was doing most of this talking? Almost all the strict irony and the vast majority of the teasing came from the adults, the parents and grandparents. The children themselves produce very little teasing, and none of them use strict irony. This figure shows it really clearly. The adults are the main players in this kind of language game, and it is not just about how much they talk. When you look at how often they tease or use irony per thing, they say adults still come out way ahead. This suggests that adults are the ones primarily setting up these playful, non-literal ways of talking with their kids. Now, how did they tell the difference between teasing and strict irony? It wasn't always about using a specific word or tone of voice. Strict irony really relies on saying something that clearly clashes with what is happening. Like in example 1, when the child spat out food, the grandfather said very civilized. Anyone seeing this would think this child is really good. You know he doesn't mean it because the child is spitting food. The situation makes the ironic meaning obvious. Teasing, though, is different. In example 2, a mother calls her child a little porter for carrying dishes. It is playful, it is an evaluation, but you don't need to understand the opposite meaning. There isn't really an opposite meaning. It is more about putting a fun label on what the child is doing. This is what they call oppositional teasing. It is about playfulness and imaginative framing, not necessarily saying the reverse of what is true. A really surprising finding was what teasing was actually used for. You might think teasing is all about just having fun and being nice to each other, and yes, that is part of it. About 39% of the teasing was for affiliative play, just for bonding and shared amusement. But nearly half of the teasing episodes, a huge 49.5%, were used for behavioral regulation. That means they were using teasing to guide the child's behavior. Think about it. Instead of saying, "eat faster, you are too slow," a parent might tease by saying something like, "you are always the last one." In example 3, the mother says, "you are always the last one" to a child eating slowly. It is playful. The child responds with playful denial, but the underlying message is still about encouraging the child to eat. This playful norm enforcement is a key idea here. It shows that even when families are being playful, they're still teaching kids the rules and expectations, but in a way that feels less like a strict command and more like a game. Another interesting point is how the children participated. The 7 teasing instances we saw from children were rarely them starting something new. Most of the time they were responding to something an adult had said or joining in on a playful frame that was already happening. Like in example 4, the mother makes a point about the child being able to eat by herself, and then the child takes that and turns it into a more exaggerated, playful challenge. This suggests that for young kids, learning to tease and use this kind of language might start with them building on what others are doing, rather than coming up with it all on their own. It is like they're learning to play the game by watching and joining in. The way people react to teasing versus strict irony is also different. When adults use strict irony, the kids mostly either followed what was asked or didn't really react noticeably. But when they were teased, there was a much wider range of responses. kids would laugh, playfully deny it, or sometimes even protest. As this table shows, a big chunk of the teasing instances led to laughter or playful denial. This makes sense because teasing often invites a playful response. Strict irony, being more about correction, tends to get a more serious response, like compliance, or simply no reaction if the ironic intent wasn't fully grasped. And importantly, they found that the way these things were set the tone of voice, facial expressions, gestures often overlapped between irony and teasing. There wasn't one single teasing marker or irony marker. It was the combination of what was said, how it was said, and what was happening around them that all worked together. This is super important because it means that to really understand if something is ironic or teasing, you have to look at the whole picture, not just one word or sound. So, what does all this mean? Well, the biggest takeaway is that teasing is a really active and common part of how families communicate, especially with young kids. It's not just about jokes. It is a tool for teaching, for bonding, and for managing behavior. The study argues that we should look beyond just irony exposure and consider this whole non-literal evaluative ecology that kids are growing up in. The fact that teasing is so often used for behavior regulation is a big deal. It means that parents are using this playful, less confrontational style to guide their children. It is like they're softening the edges of discipline, making it more engaging for the child. This playful norm enforcement is a really smart strategy. The idea that children's own teasing often builds on what adults do is also fascinating. It suggests that early communication skills in this area are scaffolded, meaning adults provide the framework and children learn to participate by adding to it. This is a great hypothesis for future research. Now, like all research, this study has its limits. Strict irony was pretty rare, so they can't make huge claims about it. Also, they only looked at dinner time, and kids are different in different situations. The fact that they found only a partial overlap between coders when identifying potential examples means that some of the counts might be a bit flexible. But overall, the findings are pretty solid. This research gives us a fantastic glimpse into the complex world of family communication. It shows us that teasing is a powerful and versatile tool used for everything from making kids laugh to guiding their behavior. It is a reminder that language is rarely just about the literal meaning and that understanding the playful, indirect ways we communicate is key to understanding how we connect with each other. My take on this is that it really highlights how creative and nuanced parenting can be. Using teasing instead of direct criticism can make learning rules less scary and more fun for kids. It is a way of maintaining connection while still addressing behavior. For future research, it would be really interesting to see if this playful norm enforcement is more common in certain cultural contexts, or with different age groups. And of course, how children themselves develop into more independent users of teasing and irony is a big area to explore. What do you think? Have you noticed your family using teasing to teach lessons? Let me know in the comments below. If you found this breakdown helpful, please give it a thumbs up, share it with anyone you think might be interested, and don't forget to subscribe to Rubin's Mind Lab for more dives into the fascinating world of psychology and human behavior. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.